Here we are back for second part of the look at my Thor collection. Again, my name's Scott Harris, and for insurance purposes, I'm running through some of the more important comics in my collection. Right now, we're looking at Thor 126 through 200. Last time we did Journey into Mystery 86 through 125. So we'll start off the bat. Here's an all-time classic cover, Jack Kirby. It's been homaged a number of times, and for good reason. It's a great cover. My copy looks like a cat ate it. However, even though it's really low grade, it looks cool, man. And especially because I have a really nice bright red date stamp on Hercules' arm saying January 12, 1966. That's the first issue of Thor after they changed the title from Journey into Mystery. Right after it, next issue, another all-time classic cover, Odin holding Thor's somewhat stiff, but, completely dead body. Yeah, this is all part of a long-running storyline where Thor goes to Olympus. One of the great epics in Thor history. It really set the tone for the whole series. These are, lower grade copies. Some of them are pretty nice. This 130, I've always really liked this cover quite a bit. And that has this is a nicer copy. It's a good mid-grade. It's probably a 5.5. This, on the other hand, has a giant piece missing out of the cover, so as you could probably guess, it's not quite as high grade. It does have a date stamp on it, though, June 20th. At some point, I'm going to have to upgrade that, though. Another low-grade copy. This one's pretty beat up. The Bright Jellians make their first appearance in this storyline. They would come back a few times. First appearance, Ego, the Living Planet, is in the story. Here's a recorder who would show up a number of times later on. Thor's a nice recurring character. He's basically a robot who just records stuff. Technology today, you can get that in an iPhone. Back then, in the 60s, you have to build an entire giant man-sized robot just to record stuff. First appearance of the High Evolutionary 134. It's more of the first High Evolutionary arc. 135. Lower. Again, these are all sort of mid-grade. At one point, for reasons that escape me, I had 3 or 4 copies of this 136. This is the best of the lot. It's still only about a 5.0. But it's a great issue, all-time classic. This is an issue, Thor sort of started off as a Superman clone a bit, and he had Jane Foster was his Lois Lane. But as they moved away from that subplot kind of became a little dated and trite. So this is the issue where Stan's version of the end of the Superman story. Thor reveals his identity to Jane, brings her to Asgard, and has Odin turn her into a goddess so they can live happily ever after. And it turns out she sucks at being a goddess and she doesn't like it, so she decides to become human again. And as a result, Odin mind wipes her so she doesn't remember Thor, and then he creates a perfect being, husband for her, and she lives happily ever after. Kind of. First appearance of Ulick the Troll, another great classic Thor villain. 138, similar in a lot of ways to the cover of 130. Another good cover. $139. Here's an interesting one, 140. Mine's got a little water damage, but I got the first appearance of the Growing Man. He's a minion of Kang's. This is an interesting issue. Kang shows up in this story in the midst of a long dry spell where he hasn't appeared. It doesn't appear in Avengers for a long time. It's the same time as Avengers 40. Kang didn't appear between Avengers 24 and 69, but he's in this issue and he's planning something as part of a scheme to fight back against some mysterious enemy. I'm not sure it was ever revealed who the hell he was supposed to be planning for. It was not the Avengers though. 141, it's a decent, solid copy. 42 is a Super Skrull. $143. I got a number of these, all the ones with these orange price tags I got in a big lot. I mentioned this last time I traded a high grade Marvel Team Up #1 for a big pile of these. Do have to admit to a little bit of embarrassment here because I have not actually read a lot of these issues I'm showing you now. There's 145. It's a nice solid mid-grade copy, which is what most of these are. I do have some nicer copies coming up. 146. If the Thunder Be Gone. Well, that would be about the only possible way that Ringmaster in the Circus of Crime could pose any threat to Thor, as if he had lost all of his powers. Like I said, I haven't actually read it, so I don't know what happens in this story. When I was amassing this collection, I wanted to wait until I had the whole run to read them. And now that I have the whole run, I just haven't had the time to get around to it. This is a nicer copy. We're getting up there into the 6.0 range on these. Just all-time classic Lee Kirby stuff. Here's the first appearance of the Wrecker, major villain. This is, I think, before the Wrecking Crew joins him. It's just Wrecker by himself at this point. Interesting multi-panel cover. He's fighting the Wrecker, and the Wrecker kicks his ass. Here's a great cover. Love this cover. Gila is just fantastic. Kirby's design is amazing. You can see this says very good right here in case you wonder what the grade is. This copy is actually really tight, flat, great gloss. The reason it's lower technical grade is because it's got heavy tanning all around the edges of the cover. But it's a great cover, great cover. I'm really looking forward to reading these at some point. Again, these are they're in the mid-grade, but we're getting up into the higher end, up into the, 5s and 6s instead of the 4s. Everything I've heard suggests that these are pretty much the best issues of Thor right here. This is a higher grade copy. It's probably a 7. It has a lot of gloss on it. It might only be a 6.5, but yeah, we'll say 7 just because I feel like it. Got this from eBay, one of these lottery things. You buy a chance, they send you a random comic. It may or may not be, in this case I think it was Journey to Mystery 83 was what I was looking for. Instead, I got that nice copy of 153. I already had a copy, so that was an upgrade. This is a nice mid-grade copy of 154. This is a classic Mangog storyline where, Odin's in the Odin sleep, and this goofy-looking mofo shows up to draw the Odin sword or whatever, which is, as you can see in this cover, a gigantic sword. It's like, you need a huge sword. There's one in Asgard. Apparently that's what Mangog is looking for. And if he draws the sword, then it's Ragnarok. Which, oh, look. Yep, sure enough, it's Ragnarok. Oops. This is a weird cover. Like, a giant hand that doesn't even have fingers. It's just got, like, creepy tentacles. It comes out of nowhere and just squeezes the bejesus out of Thor. Squeezes him right off panel on my copy because it's miswrapped. That's a nicer copy. Right after that classic storyline, we get this issue. This is a key issue. I have a lower grade copy of this. This is retelling Thor's origin. So that's a good one. 159 date stamp on the front, October 21st. And 159 kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because everything around it is so awesome. Right here, 160, we start with Galactus. We get the origin to Galactus in this storyline. So these are key issues right here. Nice copy of 151. It does have some pretty heavy tanning, but structurally is very solid. 152. Really like this cover a lot. I think they could have done a better job of the coloring on it. I mean, I appreciate what they're trying to do. They have Thor in color in the foreground, and then they color all the rest of the Warriors 3 and the other Asgardians blue, so the focus is on Thor and Galactus. But it's a little too monotone for me, especially considering the design of it is so freaking cool. It's just a great cover. Sort of messed up a little bit by the weird coloring decisions. 163, got a date stamp right here, April 21st, which is a little strange, actually, because it's cover dated April. So you would think that the date stamp would be from a couple months earlier. For instance, this is date stamp April 21st. They got the next issue right here, which also has to happen as they have a date stamp of April 15th on it. So whoever was getting this 163 on April 21st was seriously behind because the next issue had already come out. And then right after the Galactus storyline, we get Adam Warlock, still calling himself him, in a key storyline here. He first appeared in Fantastic Four. There's 166. Very cool cover. I like the use of color on here. I like how the city in the background, it's all green, you know, it's all just monotone, but then the parts that are you can see through Spectral Thor take on his coloring. I really like that effect. Boom, Galactus again. It's like, it's almost in these issues as though, you know, Stan and Jack set up stories in other titles, and then the payoff for the big cosmic epics of the time were all in Thor. Because Thor was the only character that was cosmic enough to deal with it. So unfortunately, I'm at 170, like, oh, it's the Thermal Man. Like, yeah, you were just dealing with Warlock and Galactus and Ego the Living Planet. The birth of the universe. Some dude named Thermal Man is really not that impressive. Thor, I assume in that issue he just laughs in his face. I haven't read it yet. The Wrecker again. That's a nice copy. Date stamp, October 2nd, 1969. Surprise! It's James Foster. I bet she was really surprised since she doesn't remember her relationship with Thor. Ulick the Troll. You can see here they're kind of going back to a lot of classic characters that haven't appeared for a while. The Wrecker, Ulick. I ended up with like 3 copies of this issue for some reason. This is the nicest one. It is a nice copy. Here's a cool story. I mean, a cool cover. Here is Surtur. Surtur has appeared before. Here he gets a cover shot. I don't think Surtur appears again after this until, of course, the all-time classic Ragnarok story from Walt Simonson in the mid-'80s, early '80s. So it's not really a key issue, but it's a very interesting issue. Now here's a great Kirby cover. My copy's got tape pull, but you know, what are you gonna do? But that's a fantastic cover. I love that picture of Thor. 178. 179. You notice these last couple issues, all of a sudden we've got word balloons. Just sales weren't doing so well, and they thought, well, let's have some word balloons. Let's try to mix things up. I'm not necessarily sure that was really that great an idea. 180. This is Neil Adams drew that. You would never know by looking at it. I don't know who inked it, but they made sure it didn't look anything like Neil Adams. Neil Adams drew this cover too. Again, the layout's really cool, but all the things that make it Neil Adams are basically absent. They inked it to make it look as much like John Buscema as possible. I mean, which is, again, not a bad thing. This is a really cool story with Dr. Doom here. It kicks off a big epic. These I actually have read. And this is kind of a weird storyline. Basically, Dr. Doom brings in Don Blake to try and do plastic surgery to fix his face. But it leads into this storyline here, which is really epic and amazing. And then you get to the end of it, and it completely fizzles out right at the end. I forget exactly what the details are, but it's basically a search for Odin. You know, we get Gila's involved. This is a great cover. I like this where she devolves him into an old man. And Thor battles Odin. And here's the last of the storyline. And if the ending was not quite as so disappointing, this would be like remembered as like an all-time great Marvel storyline. The build-up is fantastic. And then you get to the end, and you're like, oh, I guess. Actually, I think this story is still going at this point. I mean, it goes for a long-ass time. Looks like this 190 is actually the last issue of that arc. It's a cool story. I mean, Odin, there's like all this cosmic stuff, and Odin kicks everyone's ass, and which is great. But it's just could have been better. $192 is the last issue of the 15-cent era. 193. This is kind of a key issue. Giant size. This is the 10th anniversary Marvel issue. That's why it's 25 cents. Giant size introduction of the frame. That's November 1971. This issue also guest stars the Silver Surfer. Of the issues, these later Thor issues, this one's definitely going to set you back the most if you're looking to do your own Thor run. And then we get into the frame. I love the frame design. Yellow frames especially. There's 194. Haven't read these yet, but they look cool, don't they? Warriors 3. Cartag. I'm not really afraid of a guy named Cartag. But this is basically building up to issue 200, so there's another big Mangog epic. I know there's some complaints at the time that things were getting a little repetitive. It's like, you need a big event? Let's have Mangog show up. But at this point, I mean, it's really only his second epic. I don't think it's that bad. There's Odin, dying or sleeping or whatever. He does it pretty much at will. 199. Keep in mind these are taking place at the same time as the Kree Skrull War. Notice this issue has a little star stamp up here. Still, I don't know exactly what that's from, but it's pretty well known in collecting circles. I think there's a store that used to do star stamps. I have several issues of that. I've seen them online, other people talking about the star stamp. I think there was a specific store that marked their books like that back in the day. And here's number 200. A little disappointing. It's not a giant size, like anniversary issue. I mean, it says special 200th issue, so it is anniversary, but it's not giant size like Avengers 100. But anyway, there you have it. It's Thor 126 to 200. And for my next video, you'll probably be looking at my run of Boy Comics. So there you have it.